His mother was missing for 30 years. Then he realized who was crossing the road. Before we begin, drop a comment below to tell us where you're watching from. If you believe the truth always comes out, like and subscribe. Now sit back and enjoy the story. The story opens with Ethan taking his daily morning walk through the sleepy streets of Maplewood, a quintessential New England town where autumn paints the landscape in fiery hues. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and damp earth. His golden retriever, Max, trots ahead, sniffing at fallen leaves and occasionally glancing back to ensure Ethan is still following. Ethan moves slowly, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn leather jacket. He's been retired for 2 years now, but the weight of unfinished cases lingers like an unshakable shadow. Most days he busies himself restoring antique furniture, a hobby that allows him to focus on small details rather than dwell on the larger mysteries haunting his life. Today feels different, though. As they approach the outskirts of town, the familiar crossroads loom ahead. It's a place Ethan has avoided since his mother's disappearance 30 years ago, yet something inexplicable draws him there today. Perhaps it's the thick fog rolling in from nowhere, swallowing the world around them, or maybe it's just another restless night catching up with him. As Ethan steps onto the crosswalk, the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. For a moment, everything seems eerily silent. Even Max stops mid-step, ears perked, eyes scanning the mist. Then out of the corner of his eye, Ethan sees her. She's crossing the street about 20 feet away, moving gracefully despite the uneven ground. Her auburn hair catches the dim light filtering through the fog, and she wears the same navy blue coat and red scarf he remembers so vividly. She looks exactly as she did the day she vanished, young, vibrant, untouched by time. "Mom," Ethan whispers, his voice barely audible even to himself. Margaret doesn't turn. Instead, she pauses halfway across the road, tilting her head slightly as if listening to something only she can hear. Then, without warning, she vanishes into thin air. Ethan stands frozen, heart pounding in his chest. Was it real, or was it some trick of the mind? A manifestation of grief and guilt finally breaking loose after decades of repression? Max whines softly, nudging Ethan's leg with his wet nose. Shaking off the surreal encounter, Ethan kneels beside the dog, running a hand over his fur to steady himself. "It's okay, boy," he murmurs, though he's not sure whether he's trying to reassure Max or himself. He scans the area, searching for any sign of what or who he just saw. There are no footprints in the mud, no lingering scent of perfume, nothing tangible to prove she was ever there. Yet the image of her face remains etched in his mind, clearer than any memory he's clung to over the years. Back home, Ethan pours himself a cup of coffee and sits at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the steam rising from the mug. Memories flood back. The endless nights spent combing the woods with search parties, the unanswered questions, the hollow ache of never knowing what happened to Margaret. He thinks about the old case files tucked away in the attic, gathering dust alongside other relics of his past. For the first time in years, he considers reopening the investigation, not because he believes he'll find answers this time, but because seeing her again, even briefly, reignites a hope he thought long extinguished. Later that afternoon, Ethan ventures up to the attic, brushing cobwebs aside as he retrieves a dusty cardboard box labeled MOM. Inside, he finds photographs, letters, and newspaper clippings chronicling the days following Margaret's disappearance. Among these items is a small journal she kept during the last year of her life. Flipping through its pages, Ethan discovers entries detailing strange dreams and encounters Margaret claimed to have had near the crossroads. She wrote about hearing whispers in the wind, seeing shadowy figures watching her from the trees, and feeling an overwhelming sense of being drawn toward the intersection late at night. "I don't know why I keep coming back here. Something waits for me at the crossroads, something ancient and unknowable. I feel its pull growing stronger with each passing day. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll look beyond what you see." Ethan's hands tremble as he reads those words. Could Margaret have known something, seen something, that led to her disappearance? And if so, what does it mean that she appeared to him now, looking exactly as she did then? What did Margaret mean by something ancient and unknowable? Why does the crossroads seem to hold such significance? Is Ethan truly seeing his mother, or is he unraveling under the strain of unresolved grief? As dusk falls, Ethan resolves to return to the crossroads under cover of darkness, armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and the uneasy feeling that he's stepping into territory far beyond the scope of logic or reason. Whatever awaits him there, he knows one thing for certain. The answers lie hidden beneath layers of time, memory, and perhaps even the supernatural. Ethan's second visit to the crossroads is anything but casual. Armed with a flashlight, a voice recorder, and Margaret's journal, he steps onto the desolate road under the cover of night. The air feels heavier here, as if the very atmosphere resists his presence. Max whines softly, pacing nervously at Ethan's side, unwilling to stray too far from him. The fog returns, thicker this time, swallowing the world in an impenetrable haze. Ethan calls out for his mother, his voice trembling slightly despite his resolve. "Mom! It's me, Ethan! Please! If you're here, talk to me!" For a moment, there's nothing but silence. Then faintly he hears it, a whisper carried on the wind, so soft it could almost be imagined. But Ethan knows better. He follows the sound, heart pounding, until he catches another glimpse of her. The same figure in the navy blue coat and red scarf. She stands near the edge of the woods, staring directly at him before vanishing once more. This time Ethan doesn't hesitate. He charges after her, plunging into the dense forest beyond the crossroads. Branches claw at his face and clothes as he pushes deeper, guided only by fleeting shadows and the distant echo of footsteps that seem just out of reach. Eventually he stumbles into a clearing where an old decrepit cabin looms like a specter against the moonlit sky. Max refuses to enter, barking furiously and pawing at the ground. Ethan hesitates, sensing something unnatural about the place, but his need for answers outweighs his fear. He steps inside. The interior of the cabin is dark and musty, filled with the scent of decay and damp wood. Broken furniture litters the floor, and faded wallpaper peels away in long strips. In the center of the room lies a dusty table, upon which rests a single object, a silver locket identical to one Ethan remembers his mother wearing when she disappeared. He picks it up cautiously, opening it to reveal two photographs, one of Margaret smiling warmly, the other blank. As he examines it, the temperature in the cabin drops sharply, and the faint sound of laughter fills the air. It's not malicious but eerie, a childlike giggle tinged with sorrow. Suddenly, Ethan hears a voice behind him. "You shouldn't have come." Spinning around, he sees no one. The words hang in the air, heavy with warning. His instincts scream at him to leave, but curiosity and desperation keeps him rooted to the spot. He begins searching the cabin more thoroughly, uncovering clues that hint at its strange history. A handwritten map tucked beneath a loose floorboard, marked with symbols resembling those found in folklore about ley lines and spirit crossings. An old newspaper clipping detailing disappearances linked to the crossroads over the past century. Strange carvings etched into the walls depicting figures standing at intersections while shadowy entities watch from the trees. Ethan records everything meticulously, aware that these fragments might hold the key to understanding what happened to his mother. Yet the longer he stays, the more disoriented he becomes. Time seems to warp within the cabin. Minutes stretch into hours and the whispers grow louder, overlapping in chaotic harmony. Finally, Max's frantic barking outside snaps Ethan back to reality. Clutching the locket, he bolts from the cabin, pursued by unseen forces that seem to close in around him the closer he gets to the crossroads. By the time he emerges into the open air, drenched in sweat and gasping for breath, dawn has broken, painting the horizon in pale gold. Back home, Ethan pores over the items he recovered from the cabin, piecing together their significance. He reaches out to former colleagues and locals who might shed light on the rumors surrounding the crossroads. One elderly neighbor recalls hearing strange noises the night Margaret disappeared, like someone crying, but not quite human. Another mentions seeing lights flickering near the crossroads late at night, though they never investigated further. Research reveals that the cabin was built decades ago by a reclusive man rumored to practice occult rituals. Locals claimed he made deals with spirits to gain wealth and power, only to vanish himself under mysterious circumstances. Some say the land is cursed, a nexus where the veil between worlds grows thin. Legends speak of a spectral figure seen wandering the roads near the crossroads, often described as a woman searching for something or someone she lost. Sightings are rare but always coincide with tragic events or unexplained disappearances. Ethan connects these threads, realizing that Margaret's journal entries align eerily with the lore. Her dreams of being drawn to the crossroads, her cryptic warnings, they all point to something supernatural tied to the intersection. Determined to find concrete evidence, Ethan visits the local library, digging through archives for any mention of the crossroads or the cabin. There he uncovers a chilling pattern. Every 30 years, someone connected to the area vanishes without a trace. Each disappearance coincides with autumn during the harvest moon. Margaret's case fits perfectly into this cycle, suggesting her fate may have been predetermined or orchestrated. Among the documents, Ethan finds a letter written by the original owner of the cabin, addressed to an unknown recipient. In it, the man describes a ritual meant to bind restless souls to the mortal plane, ensuring their eternal servitude. The final line sends chills down Ethan's spine. At the crossroads, the living meet the dead. Choose wisely, for some paths lead only to oblivion. Realizing the implications, Ethan begins to suspect that Margaret's disappearance wasn't random. Someone, or something, targeted her, using the crossroads as a gateway. And now, 30 years later, whatever took her has returned, calling him to follow. What role did the cabin play in Margaret's disappearance? Who or what is responsible for the disappearances linked to the crossroads? Why is Ethan being drawn into this mystery now, and what does it want from him? As Ethan prepares to confront the truth head-on, he senses that the answers lie not just in unraveling the past, but in facing his own fears and grief. The boundary between life and death blurs further, pulling him inexorably toward a revelation that will change everything he thought he knew about legacy, connection, and the mysteries of existence. Ethan's investigation takes a darker turn as he delves into his mother's personal history, uncovering secrets that challenge everything he thought he knew about her and himself. Back at home, Ethan sits at his kitchen table late into the night, poring over Margaret's journal by lamplight. Max lies curled up at his feet, occasionally lifting his head to watch Ethan with wary eyes. The entries grow increasingly cryptic as Ethan flips through the pages, revealing a side of his mother he never suspected existed. Margaret wrote extensively about her fascination with folklore surrounding liminal spaces, places where boundaries blur and realities intersect. She described the crossroads as more than just a physical location. It was, in her words, a threshold between worlds, a place where the living can touch the eternal. I feel it pulling at me, stronger each day. The veil is thinning, and I wonder if I could step through. Not to leave forever, but to see what lies beyond, to find answers, to be free. The phrase, "to be free," sends a chill down Ethan's spine. Was Margaret unhappy? Did she feel trapped in her life? These questions gnaw at him, dredging up memories of their strained relationship during his teenage years. He remembers arguments about her restlessness, her longing for something undefined. At the time, he dismissed it as midlife dissatisfaction, but now he wonders if there was more to it. Determined to understand his mother's mindset, Ethan reaches out to one of her closest friends, Mrs. Hargrove, who still lives in Maplewood. Though frail and hard of hearing, Mrs. Hargrove recalls Margaret vividly. She always had this otherworldly quality about her, Mrs. Hargrove says, sipping tea in her cozy sitting room. She'd talk about crossing over, like she was waiting for something or someone to guide her. Once she told me she felt trapped in her own skin, like she didn't belong here anymore. Ethan leans forward, gripping the armrest of his chair. Did she ever say why? Mrs. Hargrove hesitates, then nods slowly. She hinted at wanting to escape, but not from us, or even her life. More like from herself, like she wanted to break free of some invisible chains holding her back. The conversation leaves Ethan unsettled. What kind of chains could bind someone so tightly they'd consider leaving behind everyone they loved? And how does this tie into the strange events surrounding her disappearance? Returning home, Ethan resumes reading Margaret's journal. Toward the end, the entries become fragmented, almost frantic. She writes of experimenting with ancient rituals meant to transcend time and space, describing them as doorways to understanding. In one chilling entry, she details performing a ritual near the crossroads under the light of a full moon. She mentions chanting phrases in a language unfamiliar to Ethan and drawing symbols on the ground using powdered herbs. Tonight I will try again. If I succeed, I may finally know peace. If I fail, perhaps oblivion is its own reward. Ethan stares at the page, his heart pounding. Could Margaret have willingly stepped into another realm? Or did she inadvertently summon something, a force or entity, that took her against her will? He finds sketches of the symbols she described, along with instructions for creating a protective circle. It's clear she believed these practices held power, though whether real or imagined remains uncertain. As Ethan pieces together these revelations, he begins to question his own memories of Margaret. Was she truly the warm, loving mother he remembered, or was she hiding a deeper, more complicated truth? A memory surfaces, one he hasn't thought of in years. When Ethan was a child, Margaret would often take him to the woods near the crossroads, telling him stories of spirits and travelers who passed between worlds. At the time, he thought they were just bedtime tales, but now he realizes they might have been warnings or confessions. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan sits outside under the stars, clutching the silver locket he found in the cabin. He opens it again, staring at the photograph of Margaret smiling serenely. For the first time, he notices faint writing on the back of the blank photo slot. For Ethan, when you're ready. Tears well in his eyes as grief crashes over him anew. He feels both closer to his mother and farther away than ever before. Whatever drove her to the crossroads 30 years ago, it seems she left breadcrumbs for him to follow, for reasons he doesn't yet understand. Why was Margaret experimenting with ancient rituals? And what did she hope to achieve? Did she intend to leave her family, or was she coerced by an external force? What role do the symbols and rituals play in connecting the living to the dead, or to something else entirely? Ethan resolves to return to the crossroads once more, this time prepared to face whatever awaits him. Armed with Margaret's journal, the locket, and a growing sense of purpose, he knows he's nearing the heart of the mystery. But as the harvest moon rises higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the land, he can't shake the feeling that he's being watched, and that the answers may come at a price. It starts subtly, a faint rustling sound like leaves brushing against glass late at night. But when Ethan investigates, there's nothing outside except the stillness of autumn air. Then come the whispers. At first, they're indistinct murmurs drifting through the house, barely audible over the creaks of old floorboards. Over time, however, they grow clearer, more insistent. Ethan! The voice is soft but unmistakable, echoing from nowhere and everywhere all at once. It sounds like Margaret, but not quite. There's a hollow quality to it, as if her words travel across vast distances before reaching him. Each time he hears it, his pulse quickens, and Max whines uneasily, pacing the room with hackles raised. One particularly restless night, Ethan grabs a flashlight and searches every corner of the house, convinced someone, or something, is hiding within its walls. Yet no matter how thoroughly he looks, the source eludes him. By dawn, exhausted and shaken, he collapses onto the couch, only to wake hours later feeling as though he never truly slept. The next few days bring even stranger occurrences. Shadows flicker across walls where no light should fall, twisting and writhing in unnatural ways. Doors creak open on their own, and objects shift positions without explanation. Once, while preparing coffee, Ethan swears he sees a figure dart past the kitchen doorway out of the corner of his eye. When he turns to look, there's nothing there. These incidents leave him jumpy and irritable. But what disturbs him most is the growing certainty that these phenomena aren't random. They're deliberate. They feel like messages, fragments of communication from someplace beyond comprehension. Margaret's journal becomes both a lifeline and a source of dread, As he rereads her entries about liminal spaces and rituals, he notices patterns emerging. Symbols she described match those carved into the cabin walls, and phrases from her writings echo in the whispers haunting his nights. Sleep offers no refuge. Night after night, Ethan dreams of the crossroads under the cold glow of the harvest moon. In each dream, Margaret stands silently in the center of the intersection, dressed in her navy blue coat and red scarf. Her expression is calm but unreadable, her eyes fixed on him as though waiting for him to make a choice. At first, Ethan hesitates, unsure whether stepping closer will bring clarity or danger. But in one pivotal dream, he finally approaches her. As he draws near, she extends her hand toward him, not in greeting, but as if pointing to something specific. That's when he notices it, a faint scar running diagonally across the back of her right hand. It's small, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably real. The sight jolts him awake, heart racing, as memories flood back. Sitting upright in bed, Ethan recalls a moment from his childhood that had slipped into obscurity. When he was 8 years old, Margaret accidentally cut her hand while chopping vegetables in the kitchen. He remembers watching her bind the wound with a dishcloth, laughing off his concern. "Scars tell stories," she'd said, winking at him. "This one will remind me to be careful." But here's the thing. The scar in his dream isn't consistent with that injury. Its placement and shape suggest another wound entirely, one he's certain she didn't have during her lifetime. This realization sends a shiver down his spine. Could the scar symbolize something? Or worse, could it mean that the woman appearing to him isn't Margaret at all, but an imposter wearing her likeness? Desperate for answers, Ethan revisits the items he's gathered so far. Margaret's journal, the locket, the map from the cabin, and notes from his research. He spreads them out on the dining table, searching for connections. His gaze falls on the silver locket again. Opening it, he examines the blank photo slot more closely. Underneath the faint inscription, "For Ethan, when you're ready," he spots tiny etchings along the edges. Using a magnifying glass, he deciphers them. Coordinates leading to a location deep in the woods near the crossroads. A surge of adrenaline propels him into action. Whatever awaits him there, he knows it holds the key to understanding the supernatural events plaguing him, and perhaps even the truth about his mother's fate. What do the moving shadows and whispers signify? Are they warnings, invitations, or threats? Why does Margaret's appearance in his dreams differ slightly from reality? Is she truly reaching out to him, or is something else masquerading as her? Where do the coordinates lead, and what secrets lie hidden at that location? Armed with renewed determination, Ethan prepares to follow the trail laid out before him. Though fear gnaws at the edges of his resolve, he knows he can't turn back now. The supernatural forces encroaching on his world seem intent on guiding him toward the crossroads once more. And this time, he suspects there will be no escaping what lies beyond. The forest is eerily silent as Ethan treks deeper into its shadowed heart, guided by the coordinates etched inside the locket. Each step feels heavier than the last, as though the woods themselves resist his intrusion. Max trails behind him, unusually subdued, his ears flat against his head and his tail tucked low. Even nature seems to hold its breath, waiting for what's to come. Finally, Ethan reaches the cabin, a decrepit structure barely clinging to existence amidst the encroaching wilderness. Its weathered boards groan under the weight of decades, and the windows are dark voids staring blankly into the gloom. Yet there's an undeniable pull drawing him closer, a magnetic force that whispers promises of answer just beyond the threshold. Ethan pushes open the creaking door, his flashlight beam slicing through the oppressive darkness within. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, laced with something faintly metallic, like old blood. Every instinct screams at him to leave, but curiosity and the need to understand keeps him rooted in place. As he steps further inside, the remnants of Margaret's presence become unmistakable. Handwritten notes cover the walls, their jagged script looping across the peeling wallpaper like desperate cries frozen in time. Some detail obscure symbols resembling those carved into the cabin floorboards. Others describe rituals involving mirrors, thresholds, and liminal spaces. To cross over is not death, it is transformation. The mirror reflects more than flesh. It shows the soul's true path. At the crossroads, one must choose wisely. Some doors cannot be closed. These fragments paint a picture of obsession, desperation, and perhaps even madness, but they also reveal a woman searching for something profound, willing to risk everything for knowledge or escape. In the center of the room stands a makeshift altar, draped with a faded red cloth. Candles surround it, long since burned down to stubs, their wax pooling onto dried herbs scattered across the surface. Photographs lean against the base of the altar, their edges curled with age. Among them is a photo of Ethan as a child, smiling brightly while clutching Margaret's hand. Seeing it here sends a pang of grief and guilt coursing through him. He hadn't realized how much she cherished these moments until now. Near the altar lies a small wooden box, intricately carved with the same symbols found throughout the cabin. It's locked, but Ethan quickly discovers the key hidden beneath a loose floorboard nearby. His hands tremble as he inserts it, turning the mechanism with a soft click. Inside, he finds fragments of a shattered mirror, each piece no larger than his palm. They shimmer unnaturally when touched, reflecting not his face but fleeting glimpses of other places, shadowy forests, empty roads, and figures moving just out of sight. One fragment shows the crossroads bathed in moonlight, with Margaret standing silently in the middle, her scarred hand extended toward him. Ethan recoils, dropping the shard back into the box. The images vanish instantly, leaving only smooth glass behind. He realizes this isn't an ordinary mirror. It's a tool, perhaps even a gateway. But to where? And why would Margaret have created such a thing? Sitting cross-legged on the dirt-streaked floor, Ethan begins connecting the dots. From Margaret's journal entries to the artifacts in the cabin, a chilling narrative emerges. She wasn't merely fascinated by folklore about liminal spaces. She actively sought to explore them, believing they held answers to questions humanity had forgotten how to ask. The rituals she performed weren't idle experiments. They were attempts to transcend mortality, to step outside the confines of reality itself. Something went wrong during her final attempt near the crossroads. Whether she succeeded in crossing over or became trapped between worlds remains unclear. But whatever happened, it left echoes that still ripple through time and space. Yet one question gnaws at him relentlessly. Why? What drove her to pursue such dangerous knowledge? Was it a desire for freedom, as Mrs. Hargrove suggested? Or was it something darker, a longing to escape pain, regret, or some unseen torment? As Ethan sifts through the evidence, he notices another note scrawled in the corner of the wall, almost obscured by shadows. Beware the price of crossing over. Not all who seek eternity find peace. The words send a chill racing down his spine. Whatever Margaret discovered or unleashed, it came at a cost. And now, as Ethan pieces together her journey, he senses that he's being drawn into the same perilous path. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the cabin's fragile frame. Max growls softly, his hackles rising once more. Ethan knows he should leave, but something compels him to stay just a little longer, to delve deeper into the mystery before him. What exactly did Margaret do during her final ritual at the crossroads? Did she succeed in transcending mortality, or did she fall victim to something malevolent? What role does the mirror play in bridging worlds, and what dangers lie in using it? Is Ethan walking the same path as his mother, risking his own sanity, or worse, to uncover the truth? Ethan carefully gathers the fragments of the mirror, wrapping them in a cloth before tucking them into his bag. He doesn't fully understand their purpose yet, but he knows they're crucial to solving the puzzle. As he steps back into the forest, the weight of his discoveries settles heavily on his shoulders. The supernatural forces surrounding him feel closer now, almost protective or predatory. Either way, Ethan understands that he's running out of time. Whatever waits for him at the crossroads demands resolution, and he can no longer ignore its call. The night is unnaturally still as Ethan approaches the crossroads, guided by an invisible thread pulling him toward destiny. The harvest moon hangs low in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the desolate intersection. Shadows stretch long and distorted across the cracked asphalt, blending with the mist that swirls like restless spirits. Max refuses to follow beyond the tree line, whining softly as if sensing the boundary between worlds. Ethan steps into the center of the crossroads, clutching the fragments of the mirror tightly in his hand. His breath fogs in the cold air, and every sound, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant hoot of an owl, feels amplified, as though the universe itself holds its breath. And then she appears. This time, Margaret doesn't vanish when Ethan calls out to her. She stands motionless, bathed in the pale light of the moon, her youthful face etched with sorrow and longing. Her eyes meet his, and for the first time in 30 years, they truly see each other. "Ethan," she says, her voice soft yet resonant, carrying a weight that transcends mere words. "I've waited so long for you to find me." Tears blur Ethan's vision as he takes a hesitant step forward. "Mom, what happened to you? Why did you leave?" Margaret lowers her gaze, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. When she speaks again, her tone is heavy with regret. "I didn't want to leave, not really, but I couldn't stay either. You have to understand, I was drowning. Every day felt like a prison sentence, trapped in a life that never seemed enough. I feared death more than anything, not because I wanted to live forever, but because I feared being forgotten, erased." She pauses, gathering herself before continuing. "Our family has always carried secrets, knowledge passed down through generations of women who sought something greater than mortality. I thought I could use it to escape my fears, to become something eternal. So I came here, to this place where boundaries blur, and performed the ritual." Her voice cracks and she looks away, unable to meet his eyes. "But I didn't understand the cost. Immortality isn't freedom, it's exile. I sacrificed my place in both worlds, existing only as a shadow tethered to this threshold. For 30 years I've wandered endlessly, watching you grow up from afar, unable to touch your life or guide you. It's been unbearable." Ethan struggles to process her confession, his mind reeling with questions. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let anyone know what you were doing?" "I couldn't risk it," Margaret replies, her voice tinged with anguish. "If I had told you, or anyone, you would have tried to stop me, and maybe you would have succeeded. But I was selfish, Ethan. I wanted answers, even if they came at a price. I thought I could control it, bend the rules of existence to my will. Instead, I lost everything." She reaches out toward him, her hand hovering inches from his cheek. Though her touch doesn't connect, Ethan feels a warmth radiating from her gesture, a fleeting reminder of the love they once shared. "You deserve better than the legacy I left behind," she continues. "This knowledge, these rituals, they're chains, not keys. They promise power but deliver only suffering. I wanted to warn you, to keep you safe, but all I could do was leave breadcrumbs. That's why I appeared to you now, to make sure you don't follow the same path." Ethan sinks to his knees, overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions: grief, anger, love, and finally acceptance. He realizes now that his mother wasn't running away from him. She was running towards something she believed would save her from her own despair. "I forgive you, Mom," he whispers, his voice breaking. "I wish you hadn't gone through this alone. I wish I could have helped you." Margaret smiles faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You already have, Ethan. By coming here, by facing the truth, you've given me peace. That's all I ever wanted, for you to understand, to remember me not as someone who abandoned you, but as someone who loved you too much to drag you into my mistakes." As the conversation draws to a close, the atmosphere shifts. The mist thickens, swirling around them like a living entity. Margaret's form begins to fade, her outline growing translucent against the moonlit backdrop. "It's time for me to go," she says gently. "But before I do, there's one last thing you need to decide." She gestures to the fragments of the mirror clutched in Ethan's hand. "These shards hold the key to crossing over, to stepping into the unknown. If you choose to use them, you'll gain access to the same knowledge I sought. But beware, Ethan. Once you cross this threshold, there's no turning back. Are you ready to pay the price?" Ethan stares at the shimmering pieces, their unnatural glow pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. For a moment, temptation flickers within him, the desire to unlock the mysteries of existence, to reunite with his mother fully. But deep down, he knows the cost isn't worth it. No, he says firmly, rising to his feet. I won't make the same mistake you did. I choose to stay, to live, to remember, to cherish what we had. That's how I'll honor you. Margaret's smile widens, filled with pride and relief. Then my journey ends here. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. With those final words, she dissolves into the mist, leaving behind only the faint scent of her perfume and the echo of her laughter. Why did Margaret perform the ritual? To escape her fear of death and insignificance, seeking a form of immortality that ultimately trapped her between worlds. What has she been doing for 30 years? Existing as a spectral presence, unable to interact fully with either the mortal world or the afterlife. What choice does Ethan face? Whether to pursue forbidden knowledge or embrace the beauty of impermanence and human connection. As dawn breaks, Ethan stands alone at the crossroads, the fragments of the mirror cradled in his hands. He feels lighter somehow, as though a great weight has lifted from his soul. Though Margaret is gone, her memory remains vivid, woven into the fabric of his identity. For the first time in decades, he feels at peace. The mist swirls thicker now, wrapping the crossroads in an ethereal cocoon that muffles sound and blurs vision. Ethan stands frozen, his breath shallow as Margaret's plea hangs heavy in the air. Her translucent form flickers like a candle caught in a draft, her presence both fragile and urgent. Ethan, she says softly, her voice trembling with emotion, this is your chance to set me free or bring me back, but you must choose wisely. There's no turning back once the ritual begins. Her words send a jolt through him, forcing him to confront the gravity of the decision before him. Each option carries unbearable weight, pulling at opposite ends of his heart. If you help me finish the ritual, Margaret continues, I'll finally be able to cross over completely. I'll leave this threshold behind and step into whatever lies beyond. It's what I've longed for all these years, a chance to find peace, to rest. She pauses, her gaze piercing despite her ghostly appearance. But it also means saying goodbye forever. You won't see me again, not here, not anywhere. My existence will end as you know it. Ethan feels a lump rise in his throat. The thought of losing her again, this time permanently, is almost suffocating. Yet he can't ignore the quiet desperation in her voice, the yearning for release after 30 years of wandering between worlds. He thinks about their conversations earlier, about how trapped she felt in life, and how much she sacrificed chasing freedom. If completing the ritual grants her peace, isn't that what she deserves? There's another way, Margaret adds hesitantly, her voice dropping to a whisper. You could undo the spell entirely, reversing the ritual and bringing me back to the mortal plane. We'd have a second chance, to live together, to make up for lost time. Her eyes shine with hope, but there's a shadow of doubt lurking beneath. But destabilizing the balance I've maintained for so long, it's dangerous. It might trap us both in limbo, neither alive nor dead. Or worse, unravel everything we've built since my disappearance, including your memories of me. Ethan's mind races as he considers the implications. Bringing her back would mean reclaiming the mother he lost, healing the void her absence left in his life. But at what cost? Could he risk destroying the delicate connection they've just rekindled? And would undoing the spell erase the lessons he's learned about grief, acceptance, and legacy? Ethan paces the crossroads, the fragments of the mirror clutched tightly in his hand. Max whines softly from the tree line, sensing his master's turmoil. The weight of choice presses down on him, each path offering its own kind of loss. Completing the ritual means letting go, for good. Undoing the spell means risking chaos, potentially sacrificing himself and everything he's worked towards since her disappearance. He closes his eyes, replaying memories of Margaret, the warmth of her embrace, the sound of her laughter, the way she used to tell him stories under the stars. He remembers, too, the pain of her absence, the unanswered questions, the sleepless nights spent wondering why she left. And then he thinks of himself, not the man consumed by grief and guilt, but the one who has grown stronger, more resilient, through facing those emotions head on. He realizes now that part of loving someone is learning to let them go when they're ready. Taking a deep breath, Ethan approaches the center of the crossroads. He places the fragments of the mirror on the ground, arranging them into a circle as Margaret watches silently. The glass shimmers unnaturally, reflecting not the world around them, but glimpses of infinite possibilities. Peaceful fields bathed in sunlight, shadowy realms filled with whispers, moments of joy and sorrow intertwined. "I'm sorry, Mom," Ethan says, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. "I want to keep you here. I do. But I can't risk trapping you, or myself, in something neither of us understands. And I know you don't belong here anymore. Not fully." Margaret's expression softens, relief washing over her features. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "For understanding. For loving me enough to let me go." With shaking hands, Ethan traces the symbols Margaret taught him onto the ground, chanting the incantation she once whispered in her journal. The air grows colder, the mist swirling faster until it forms a vortex around them. As the ritual reaches its climax, Margaret steps closer, her form glowing brighter with each passing moment. She reaches out one last time, her hand brushing against his cheek in a touch that feels real for the first time in decades. "I'll always be with you, Ethan," she says, her voice echoing like distant music. "In your memories, in your choices, in the love you carry forward. That's how we endure." And then, with a final burst of light, she vanishes. What does completing the ritual entail? Granting Margaret eternal peace, though it means permanent separation. What are the risks of undoing the spell? Destabilizing the balance between worlds, potentially trapping Ethan and Margaret in limbo, or erasing their shared history. Why does Ethan choose to complete the ritual? Because he understands that true love means letting go, allowing Margaret to find the peace she sought for so long. The crossroads fall silent, the mist dissipating as dawn breaks over the horizon. Ethan kneels in the center of the intersection, the shards of the mirror lying dark and inert at his feet. Though his heart aches with loss, he feels lighter, as if a chapter has closed, leaving space for new beginnings. Max approaches cautiously, nudging Ethan's hand with his nose. Smiling faintly, Ethan rises to his feet, wiping away his tears. "It's okay, boy," he murmurs, scratching Max behind the ears. "We'll be okay." As they walk away from the crossroads, the first rays of sunlight break through the trees, casting golden light across the path ahead. The air at the crossroads feels electric, charged with an otherworldly energy that hums in Ethan's chest like a second heartbeat. He kneels on the cold asphalt, his hands trembling as they hover over the fragments of the mirror arranged in a perfect circle before him. Each shard glimmers faintly, reflecting not the physical world, but glimpses of infinite possibilities. Fields bathed in golden light, star-strewn skies, and shadowy realms that pulse with quiet mystery. Margaret stands nearby, her form shimmering like moonlight on water. Her eyes are filled with gratitude and love, yet there's also a profound sadness, a mother saying goodbye to her child for the last time. Ethan takes a deep breath, steadying himself as he begins tracing the ancient symbols into the ground around the mirror shards. His fingers move deliberately, guided by the instructions scrawled in Margaret's journal and the rituals etched into the walls of the cabin. The symbols glow faintly as he completes each one, their light spreading outward in intricate patterns until the entire crossroads seems alive with radiant energy. Max watches from a distance, his tail tucked low and his ears flattened against his head. Ethan can feel the dog's unease, but Max stays close, loyal to the end. When the final symbol is drawn, Ethan rises to his feet, facing his mother. "Are you ready?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Margaret nods, tears glistening in her eyes. "I've been waiting for this moment for 30 years, she replies, her voice soft but resolute. "Thank you for giving me the courage to let go, and for finding the strength to say goodbye." Ethan begins chanting the incantation, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging within him. The words flow like a river, ancient and powerful, resonating through the stillness of the night. With each syllable, the glow intensifies, bathing the crossroads in cascading waves of ethereal light. The mist swirls faster now, forming a vortex that engulfs them both. Margaret's form grows brighter, almost too radiant to look at directly. She steps closer, reaching out to place her hand gently on Ethan's cheek. This time, her touch feels real, warm and solid, a fleeting reminder of the bond they shared. "I'm so proud of you, Ethan," she whispers, her voice echoing softly, as though carried on the wind. "You've always been my greatest legacy. Carry our story forward and never forget, I'll always be with you." Her hand lingers for a moment longer before she steps back, her silhouette dissolving into the swirling light. As the ritual reaches its climax, the crossroads erupt in a blinding flash of brilliance. For a brief moment, Ethan sees visions flicker across his mind. Memories of Margaret laughing, holding him as a child, standing beside him during milestones big and small. Then, just as suddenly, the images fade, leaving behind only warmth and peace. When the light subsides and the mist clears, Margaret is gone. The crossroads lie silent once more, bathed in the soft glow of dawn breaking over the horizon. Birds begin to chirp in the distance, and the rustling leaves carry no trace of the supernatural forces that had gathered here moments ago. Ethan sinks to his knees, overwhelmed by a mix of grief and relief. Tears stream down his face, but they're accompanied by a smile, one born of acceptance and love. "She's free," he murmurs, clutching the locket tightly in his hand. Inside, the photograph of Margaret seems to shine brighter than before, as if imbued with her final act of grace. As Ethan rises to his feet, he feels lighter, as though the weight of unresolved questions and lingering guilt has finally lifted. Max approaches cautiously, nudging his hand with a wet nose. Ethan scratches the dog behind the ears, offering a small laugh through his tears. "It's okay, boy," he says, his voice hoarse but steady. "We're going to be okay." He casts one last glance at the crossroads, now peaceful and ordinary once more. Though Margaret is gone, her presence lingers, in the memories he cherishes, in the lessons she taught him about courage and sacrifice, and in the legacy of love that will shape his choices moving forward. Turning away, Ethan walks toward the rising sun, its golden rays stretching across the path ahead like a promise of new beginnings. Though the crossroads lie silent and ordinary once more, Ethan carries the weight of what transpired there, a profound mix of sorrow and peace. As he walks back toward his home, with Max trotting faithfully at his side, the first rays of dawn stretch across the horizon, casting a golden glow over the quiet streets of Maplewood. The air feels lighter, as if the world itself has exhaled alongside him. When Ethan steps through the door of his house, he's greeted by the familiar scent of wood polish and coffee grounds, simple comforts that ground him in the present moment. Yet something feels different. His gaze is drawn to the mantel above the fireplace, where the wooden box from the cabin now rests, though he's certain he left it behind in the forest. Confusion flickers across his face as he approaches it cautiously. The box sits open, its contents glowing faintly in the morning light. Inside lies one of the mirror fragments, shimmering unnaturally despite the lack of direct sunlight. Ethan hesitates before picking it up, his fingers trembling slightly as they brush against the cool surface. He raises the shard to eye level, half expecting to see his own reflection staring back. Instead, the glass ripples like liquid, revealing an image that takes his breath away. There she is, Margaret, her youthful face framed by auburn hair, smiling warmly just as she did in life. Her eyes crinkle at the corners, filled with love and gratitude, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan feels as though she's standing right beside him again. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice soft but unmistakable, echoing not in his ears but in his heart. Then just as suddenly as she appeared, her image fades, leaving only the smooth, inert surface of the mirror fragment behind. Ethan stands frozen, clutching the shard tightly as tears well in his eyes. This final gesture, a parting gift from beyond, fills him with a bittersweet sense of closure. It's not goodbye forever. It's a reminder that their connection transcends time and space. She may no longer walk among the living, but her presence remains woven into the fabric of his life, in the memories they shared, the lessons she imparted, and the legacy of love she leaves behind. Ethan places the mirror fragment carefully back into the wooden box, closing its lid with reverence. He sets the box aside on the mantel, next to photographs of happier times. Images of Margaret laughing, holding him as a child, celebrating milestones big and small. For the first time in decades, he doesn't feel the sharp sting of loss when he looks at those pictures. Instead, he sees joy, the kind of enduring love that shapes identities and connects generations. Max curls up at his feet, resting his head on Ethan's shoe as if sensing his master's need for companionship. Ethan sinks into his favorite armchair, gazing out the window at the rising sun. Though the ache of grief will always linger, it no longer consumes him. He thinks about the choices he made, the sacrifices, the acceptance, the courage to let go, and realizes they were never about forgetting. They were about remembering differently, about honoring Margaret not by clinging to the past, but by carrying her spirit forward into the future. Later that day, Ethan retrieves Margaret's journal from the kitchen table. Flipping through its pages, he finds solace in her words, not as cryptic warnings or desperate pleas, but as glimpses into the mind of a woman who sought meaning in a chaotic world. He decides to preserve her story, writing down everything he uncovered during his journey, from the strange events at the crossroads to the rituals she performed and the truth about her disappearance. It's not just for himself, it's for anyone who might come after him, searching for answers about family, legacy, and the mysteries of existence. As dusk falls, Ethan lights a candle and sets it beside the wooden box on the mantel. Its flickering flame casts dancing shadows across the room, filling the space with warmth and life. "I'll keep your memory alive, Mom," he murmurs softly, raising a cup of coffee and a silent toast. "And I'll make sure our story helps others find their way." Outside, the wind rustles through the trees, carrying with it the faintest whisper of laughter, a sound so familiar it brings a smile to Ethan's lips. The seasons have turned once more, and autumn's fiery hues give way to the crisp stillness of winter. Snow blankets the quiet streets of Maplewood, muffling sound and lending the town an almost dreamlike quality. Inside his cozy home, Ethan sits at his workbench, surrounded by the tools of his craft: sandpaper, brushes, varnish, and fragments of wood waiting to be reborn. Restoring antiques has taken on new meaning for him now. Each piece he works on, a cracked chair leg, a splintered tabletop, or a faded carving, is a reminder that broken things can become beautiful again with care and patience. Just like grief, he thinks, it doesn't disappear, it transforms, leaving behind something stronger and more resilient than before. On the desk beside him lies a stack of neatly typed pages, the draft of a memoir chronicling his journey over the past months. The title is simple yet evocative: The Stranger on the Crosswalk. In its pages, Ethan recounts everything: the unresolved pain of losing Margaret, the strange encounters at the crossroads, the secrets hidden in the cabin, and the supernatural revelations that led him to confront both his mother's choices and his own fears. Writing the book wasn't easy. There were nights when the memories overwhelmed him, forcing him to step away from the keyboard and sit in silence until the storm passed. But there were also moments of clarity when putting words to paper felt like stitching together the fractured pieces of his soul. He hopes the memoir will do more than just recount his story. He wants it to offer comfort to those who've lost loved ones, to those burdened by unanswered questions, and to anyone searching for meaning in the face of life's mysteries. "It's not about finding all the answers," he writes in the final chapter. "Sometimes it's about learning to live with the unknown, about cherishing what we had while embracing what comes next, and about understanding that love endures, not in the physical presence of someone, but in the ways they shape us, guide us, and remain woven into our lives." When the book is published months later, it garners unexpected attention. Local newspapers feature interviews with Ethan, praising his courage in sharing such a deeply personal tale. Readers write letters expressing gratitude, saying his words helped them navigate their own journeys through grief and acceptance. One letter stands out: a young woman named Claire, whose mother disappeared under mysterious circumstances years ago. She thanks Ethan for giving her hope, that even if she never finds concrete answers, she can still find peace. Her note ends with a simple sentence that brings tears to his eyes. "Your story made me realize I'm not alone." Ethan replies to every letter personally, knowing how much these connections mean to others and to himself. Through storytelling, he discovers a renewed sense of purpose, to honor Margaret's memory not only privately but publicly, ensuring her legacy extends beyond their family. Life begins to feel lighter as time passes. Ethan takes long walks with Max through the snow-covered woods, no longer avoiding the crossroads but acknowledging it with quiet respect. He joins a local writers group where he meets people eager to share their own stories of resilience and healing. One evening, as he prepares dinner, the phone rings. It's an old colleague from his detective days, inviting him to speak at a conference about cold cases. At first, Ethan hesitates. He hasn't thought about his former career in years, but something compels him to say yes. Standing on stage weeks later, he speaks candidly about unresolved cases, including Margaret's disappearance. He emphasizes the importance of closure, whether it comes through solving a mystery or simply learning to let go. His talk earns a standing ovation, and afterward, strangers approach him with tears in their eyes, thanking him for his honesty and wisdom. Back home, Ethan places the wooden box back on the mantel, now flanked by copies of his memoir. The mirror fragment inside remains dark and inert, but he knows its significance will never fade. It's a symbol of the bond he shared with Margaret, a connection that transcends death itself. As he lights a candle beside the box, he whispers softly, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Outside, the wind stirs the bare branches of the trees, carrying with it the faintest whisper of laughter, a sound so familiar it brings a smile to his lips. In the quiet moments, when the world seems to pause and silence wraps itself around him like a familiar blanket, Ethan feels it, not in grand gestures or dramatic displays, but in subtle, tender ways that make his heart ache with gratitude rather than sorrow. It's there in the gentle breeze that brushes past him as he works in his garden, rustling leaves and carrying whispers only he can hear. It lingers in the faint scent of lavender that occasionally drifts through the air, though no flowers grow nearby. And sometimes, late at night when sleep eludes him, he swears he hears her voice, a soft hum of a lullaby she used to sing when he was a child. These fleeting sensations don't unsettle him. Instead, they bring comfort. They remind him that while Margaret may no longer walk beside him, her presence is woven into the fabric of his everyday life. Her love remains a guiding force, shaping his choices and grounding him during uncertain times. One crisp spring morning, Ethan visits the crossroads again, not out of obligation, but out of reverence. The intersection looks different now, bathed in sunlight and framed by budding trees. Gone are the oppressive shadows and swirling mists. In their place is an ordinary stretch of road, yet one imbued with profound significance for Ethan. He kneels briefly, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers at the center of the crossroads. "Thank you," he murmurs softly, his breath catching slightly, "for showing me how to let go and how to keep going." As he rises to leave, a warm gust of wind wraps around him, lingering just long enough to feel like an embrace. He smiles, knowing exactly what it means. Back home, Ethan resumes his routines with renewed purpose. Restoring antiques becomes more than just a hobby. It's a metaphor for his own journey. Each piece he repairs carries echoes of his story, brokenness transformed into beauty, loss giving way to meaning. The memoir continues to resonate with readers, sparking conversations about grief, legacy, and the enduring power of love. Ethan finds joy in connecting with others who share their stories, each exchange deepening his understanding of the human experience. And yet, amid all this growth, he never forgets where it began. The wooden box remains on the mantel, its mirror fragment a silent testament to the bond he shares with Margaret. Occasionally he'll open it, running his fingers over the smooth glass, half expecting to see her smile once more. Though the shard stays dark now, he knows her light still shines, in his memories, in his actions, and in the lives she indirectly touches through him.